All right, continuing on with my overview, collective thoughts of BB7 as it is so far. We're going to go into the gameplay and rules of BB7. And these are mostly things I don't really like. Okay, so the two big things, the new victory points, the genocide VP, where you get a victory point as the axis for killing all of the units of an allied power. I think that's named in extremely poor taste. It double dips with the China point, which feels weird and kind of lame to me. The French destroyer being swapped in the setup for a Commonwealth, or was it the British destroyer here got swapped to Commonwealth, the French destroyer here got swapped to British. That feels like it kind of shoehorns. I mean, I get it. The French player can't just go scurry off or whatever, but I don't think the solution is to make France even less fun to play. Swapping out the French infantry here for British infantry to, again, shoehorn that in. It's less historical, and like I said, makes France even more boring to play, and it just doesn't feel like a proper solution to me. I think it's too easy for allied players to prevent, except with China, especially because if Russia's really in trouble and actually being extinguished, all they have to do is just send a dude into the pass here, because violence doesn't happen in the pass unless you're going to make it so that not violence, combat can't happen in the pass unless you change that rule. It's it's easy to scurry that French fighter off someplace else and not risk it, or get a guy off of Africa or wherever, or just into an inconvenient spot. It feels weird that it double dips with China, but I think the fact of it being the genocide point, calling it the genocide point. It just feels like something Larry Harris would not approve, as he always wanted to keep the politics out of the game. If you really want to have this victory point in, I would say calling it the domination point would remove the bad taste. You could also change it to control of a power's territories rather than the killing of their units. Like if you controlled all Russian territories, you controlled all Chinese territories, you controlled all British territories, which is, I get, almost impossible. All French territories, almost impossible. I get it. He's confirmed that Italy does not count towards the domination point, which that's a good thing. I agree with that. Yeah, and then having control of all the Chinese territories would be only for the China point, not the domination or genocide point. I don't know. I just don't like saying. I don't know. I just do not like. That victory point. It brings the Nazi politics into the game. I don't. I just don't like it. I just don't like it. The neutrals VP is not terrible, but not great, not terrible. I mean, it's fine. I guess if there were new VPs, I guess I'd be kind of more excitable about it if there were like 3 other good VPs added into so that it could buffer those, if that makes any sense. It just the neutrals VP just kind of feels like you're scraping the barrel, kind of, I guess. I mean, I like it, but I don't love it. I don't know. It just doesn't. I don't know. I just wish there were. If we were gonna add more VPs, I wish there was just something more. I don't know. Something else, like resources, or maybe a separate category of resources or something. I don't know. Not saying not saying neutrals is terrible. It's just not. It feels. Maybe it's too obvious. Maybe that's good. I don't know. I'm just spitballing with that one. Okay, the Russian-Iran lend-lease. Moving onward to this. Kind of cool. But in my game, if Russia got in a good spot, the units they receive in Iran, those can just easily just get sent to India, just pad India. I actually sent an artillery and a tank from the lend-lease just up into China, so that they could participate up here. I had a super China going on because there was a J1 against. It just he didn't. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. China became a beast in my game. Um, let's see what else. My suggestion with this, with the Iran lend-lease, instead of the units going down in Iran, okay, the units should go down in northern Iran. So the Allies should have to control both Iran and northern Iran in order for Russia to get the lend-lease. And one reason why they should go down in northern Iran as opposed to Iran is if UK builds a complex here, then those units go even up one step further, right? Okay. And if they go down in northern Iran, well, you can't build a complex in northern Iran. Can't have a complex in northern Iran because it's only worth $1. Russia can't move a complex down there either because it's not an original Russian territory. But that would prevent railing units or getting units that would prevent Russian units from getting to India in one turn. And it would also prevent the dipping with the railing going, in whatever direction. But I mean, I guess it would kind of be represented by that, but, so they would still go 1-2, but they wouldn't go 1-2-3, but they wouldn't be going to India in one move. And also it would pair with the existing lend-leases where the lend-lease is 2 spaces away from the destination, right? So here, 1-2, right? Here it'd be 1-2. So the lend-lease should go down in northern Iran. The Russian lend-lease units should go down in northern Iran, not in Iran. Okay. The China national objective, the new Chinese national objective. It is a little awkward. If China's doing well, it's like the new national objective is what they get $2 for every 3 territories they control. If China's doing well, it's a little awkward to count up. That's all, because you have to do like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and these territories are so much more. I don't know how else to explain it. There's so much more. It's kind of difficult to actually count these up. So yeah, I had to do like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, or whatever. Again, I had a super China. If China's not doing well, it's easier to count up. But if China's doing well, it's just a little awkward to count up. The whole rule with being able to have 2 complexes in territories that are worth more than like 10 IPCs or more, or whatever the rule is, right? It feels weird. It feels weird. It feels like Tokyo will now never fall, and I think the reason he did that was because he play tested where, like, what happens if allies throw everything at Tokyo, and so I guess that's the solution to it. But I don't know. It just feels weird. Hey, being able to have 2 complexes in Japan. It feels like, 2 major complexes in Japan. It just feels like Tokyo will never fall, ever. Which I just don't know if that's really the solution. They can also build a minor complex up in Hokkaido if they wanted to. Western U.S. being able to have having 2 complexes there, being able to U.S. starting with 2 complexes here. I don't know. It just feels weird, and maybe just because it's new. But I just feel like there could have been a different solution to it personally. I don't know. Not a deal breaker, but just a little weird. The new mech technology is kind of cool. I didn't see it come into play in my game with Wild Bill. I didn't. He had heavy tanks, and he didn't reveal it to the very end. But the mech tech is a kind of a cool idea, but I feel like, so basically what the mech tech is, if you're not familiar with it, the mech tech is if you invest in improved mechs, mechanized infantry. A mechanized infantry can tow 2 infantry or an infantry artillery, which is cool, but I feel like standard mechs should have a basic tow ability where they can tow 1 infantry each. I think that makes sense because then when you have the tech power, then you're improving something that's already in play. You know, that's kind of like related to all the other techs are like that. They don't just give something a new ability that they didn't have before. They make something better. So it just kind of makes sense to me that you know, if mechs are going to have this tow ability, they should have a basic tow ability. Now, the other thing why you would want to use it is that infantry that are loaded onto mechs, or infantry or units that are loaded onto mechs as cargo, they can get railed, and that cargo does not count. This is not considered part of the. So like the 5. Let me back up. So Germany can rail up to 5 mechs 3 spaces away, right? And then each of those mechs be loaded with infantry or artillery. And so it basically like triple dips your railing, which is, I don't know about that. It just, that really feels excessive to me. I haven't seen it in play, but it just hearing that feels really overpowered to me. So I don't know how to feel about that yet. Again, I haven't seen it in play, but my suspicion, just my gut is telling me that that's not great. With the setup of Japan, after he unveiled the map, and then people had setup issues, and he revised the setup in China, he gave Shanxi and Fujian to Japan. So Japan has to start with those 2 territories, and they have to have roundels on those territories. I think that should have been avoided because it's an obvious, like, visible patch. I think he should have just, you know, moved those units back into Shantung and Kiangsu, I guess. I don't know. It just feels like a very obvious patch, and then that was like a kind of an error in setup. But also just giving Shanxi to Japan allows Japan to make headway north too quickly, I feel like. They should have to move into Shanxi and then progress. I mean, giving them this one, sure, whatever, but giving them this one, giving them this one to start off with allows them to move north too fast. So I think that should be, I really think these should just be, maybe just leave them as empty Chinese territories or something, or whatever. But those 2 territories, I think Japan shouldn't start with those. The Chinese AAA is cool. I think it's cool that China has the ability to have AAA now, but with the starting setup, they only have the one in Yunnan or Hunan, wherever it was. Yeah, Hunan. And because of the setup here, basically China starts with a AAA, but they don't get to use it, or they don't get to move it. You know, it gets killed probably is going to get killed right away. So I don't know if Japan is going to go hard at China right off the bat. Yeah, if Japan is going to, like, it's just kind of, it's cool that they start with one, but they don't, most of the time, 9 times out of 10, they're probably not going to be able to move it or whatever, right? I think it makes no sense that Chinese AAA, I've voiced this before in the chats, I've voiced this before, and I'm just going to repeat myself here, and that'll be the end of it. I think it makes no sense that Chinese AAA cost 4 and they still have the same stats as normal AAA that cost 5. I have a house rule that China starts with 2 AAA, but they can only have a max of 2. They do cost 4, but they can only fire up to 2 shots each. So you have one down here, and you have one up here. You have one on like either end, and China can choose to gradually merge them if they want. I'm not saying that they have to start in those territories, but basically, you know, China has 2 AAA. They can only have 2 AAA. Japan can only ever fight against 2 Chinese AAA at the same time. You know, same rule with cavalry, but for 2 AAA. They can only have a max of 2. They cost 4, but they can only fire up to 2 shots each. So, Japan's only going to have, 4 AAA shots at most from China to worry about. Rather than in my game, by the end of it, again, I had a Super Japan. Not Super Japan. I had a Super China. And, yeah, I think I had like 4 or 5 Chinese AAA by the end of it. It was just gradually securing these points and stuff. Anyway, it makes sense, because it makes sense for if they're going to cost 4, they should be less effective than AAA that cost 5, because the Chinese tanks cost 5 and they have the same stats as other tanks, except they defend at 2. They're like light tanks, right? I think that's cool, and I think the Chinese AAA, if they're going to cost 4, they should have a less effective stat like that. And then also because of that, they won't Chinese player probably isn't going to invest a lot of money into AAA, but that way they start with the max that they have, then they start with the max that they can have. Anyway, that's just my little house rule idea. I think it's kind of came up with that before the BBR AAA was announced or whatever. Just that was my version. Anyway, okay. But yeah, they should start in territories that Japan won't attack on J1. Okay, the cruiser AAA, on the subject of AAA. The cruiser AAA, it's all right. It did make me buy cruisers. It seems kind of like a bit much, though, because of like the channel, because of the 2 cruisers there. Then that means like Germany always the G1 is even scarier now. The English Channel battle is even scarier now, because they're gonna have Germany's gonna have 5 AAA shots thrown at it the beginning of the game, and I just don't know how I feel about that. I don't know. I know me and Madman have gotten pushback on this, but we think it makes more sense it would make historically more sense for aircraft carriers to actually have AAA. But you'd have to like increase their cost or something, or maybe only super carriers have AAA shots, and maybe the solution is a cruiser has 1 AAA shot, a battleship has 3 AAA shots like normal, but an aircraft carrier only has 2 AAA shots, and you beef the cost up for them. I don't know, but if you wanted to do that, I think that would be the way to do it. As to how much they would cost, I'm not really sure yet, but if you up to the price of them. Really, an aircraft carrier should cost more than a battleship, though, but I mean, it's a game. All right. During this game, the AAA rule for flyovers and combat was changed to a double dip rule, where AA could fire on both flyovers and combat. And this has recently been revised to AAA can fire at both, but not exceed a total of 3 shots each. So if they have 2 AAA shots in the battle and there's a flyover, they can fire like 1 AAA shot in at the flyover or something like that, right? They can do that. So revision to that middle ground, I feel is good. Just throwing that out there. I do feel like at this point in games, complexes shouldn't have built-in AAA anymore, and it should be your AAA units that protect the complexes. I think that would be cool. Maybe if you have radar and ATC, maybe that would give your complexes built-in AAA of some kind. Maybe they'd be limited, maybe they wouldn't. But I feel like if we got, that would prevent AAA from being just fodder units on the Western Front. Germany would have to have their AAAs in Western Germany and Berlin. They would have to have some of them there in order to protect their complexes at all, and it could bring strategic bombing runs back into the game, which have been kind of phased out, really. All right. Other notes. I'm at the point of other notes. This overview thing of mine has gone on for quite a while. It's gone on for quite a while. Thank you for listening so far, if you're listening. It's kind of weird that with all these changes, just other notes at this point. It's kind of weird that with all these changes, Italy was the least changed power, with only a few formalities on their national objectives changed, like the one for the Middle East. They don't get money for Northern Iran anymore, right? I don't know. Everybody was changed. Everybody was given a big makeover, except Italy. I don't know. I don't know. Just throwing that out there. The optional rules. I have never the optional rules being Blitzkrieg, Coalition, and Bonsai for Japan. I've never liked these optional rules. They aren't really optional because they're always played at the tournaments. More like advanced rules. Maybe that's just a formality thing, just a name formality thing. Japan's Bonsai seems weak 9 times out of 10 since it's only one round of combat, even though that makes sense. Coalition usually seems overpowered. But I don't like these rules mostly because I feel that if you can't make one of these special rules for each power, or at least make one for each major power, then it's not really worthwhile to incorporate them. It just feels like an unfinished idea in that regard. That's just how it comes off to me. I know, Sired has his expansion deck. What's it called again? I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head. He's releasing an expansion deck. Maybe there's more stuff like that in there. I don't know. He's been very secretive about what that is. What he's been secretive about what's in it, which is cool, But anyway, it just feels like an unfinished idea if there's not like Russia doesn't have one, Commonwealth doesn't have one, UK doesn't really have one. Granted, they go with US. China doesn't have one. Not that China and Italy, and Commonwealth, they don't necessarily need to have one, but it just kind of stinks that Russia doesn't have one and UK doesn't have a designated one. I guess it dips with coalition, but it just, I don't know, it feels weird that they don't have an optional rule. All right, so consensus about BB7 as it is with everything I've said and everything else. All right, so I got a lot to read here. So when Sired Blood first announced this, he said this would be like a whole new game, a whole new map. And when it was unveiled, it didn't feel like that. This is BB7. This map is building on what already exists. Maybe that whole new game, whole new map wasn't meant to be him saying that wasn't meant to be taken literally, or was strictly in reference to the 41 game he was working on and is probably still working on. But I can't help but take it literally. When he unveiled this, I was like, oh, it's the same. It's the same colored pattern. It is Bloodbath. It's continuing to evolve the game. But I was just expecting, I don't know, I guess my expectations were too high. I was expecting like a whole new map, whole new color scheme, whole new look, whole new, C-zone arrangement. He did biggest changes over here, and I like this for the most part so far. I like this. But, so much of this is still the same, I don't know. Overall, this version as it is now, it feels like a prototype, in my opinion. It feels like a prototype. I have no doubt in my mind that there will be another map to correct or expand upon this, especially with Pripyat Marshes. Many of these changes just feel like changes for the sake of changes and could have been left out or developed further. Or they're like starting ideas or things like that. I don't know. I'm not meaning to be mean about it. I'm just saying this is how it a lot of it feels like that. Things could have been just developed further. It just feels like, I don't know. I prefer a I would prefer a quality over quantity attitude with BBR. This game should not change every single year. Okay, this is probably the controversial opinion about it, because it's always been like this, right? the game should not change every single year. Earlier on, um, the rapid changes felt appropriate, but as it has evolved to a certain point, it sort of feels like it's tripping over itself. BBR's rate of change makes it extremely difficult for new players to join. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it definitely feels more challenging than it should be to get more people to join into this and play. And I'm just highly unlikely to get my local gaming friends to play BBR because of this rate of change. It's like I introduce them to it and then it changes again. And then they get like, oh, okay, well, I'm out or whatever. You can't even get them to try it because the rate of change, is the lack of any kind of stability is really off-putting. I think we'd all rather play in-person games and not strictly YouTube wars, you know? Like, I would rather play in-person games. Most people do. YouTube wars are fun, but to only play YouTube wars, kind of a bummer a little bit. I'm in Chicago. I'm in the third largest city in America, and it's like a desert for me to get other people to play outside of Madman. He's up in the suburbs, but he also is he's a busy guy. I can't always play with him and stuff. It's just how it is for me. I feel like so with the rate of change. I'm not saying the rate of change should never happen. Just to be clear, I just think every 3 years, change every 3 years would be way more appropriate. Really, there have only been rule of threes, Really, there have only been 3 versions of BBR, with this version being the first of the third iteration. Like BBR 1 through 3 is the first iteration of BBR. BBR 4, 5, and 6, second iteration of BBR. This is the beginning of the third iteration. This is how it feels to me. I would prefer Sired to keep playtesting and revising it within the community or within select people or whatever, building something, building it that having people to help catch things and proofread rather than every game's shelf life being on average like 9 months or less. That's just what it feels like to me. And think of it this way: like Out of Box 1940 Global came out in 2010. Second edition came out in 2012. If it took 2 years for a new edition of the base game to come out, then, and BBR is so much more complicated by comparison, it should take 3 years minimum before the next edition comes out to really flush stuff out. And then we don't have BBR 12.5 or something, I feel like the official rule book, the card deck, the setup, and map should all come out at once instead of this gradual release trend. The version with 7, like the rule book, he just put the file out. The map and such, that's been out for the map, and this map has been out since like whenever we did Chicago. That's BBR Chicago 2. That was June. Right? Came out in June. The map came out in June. The setups were revised over several months when people gave their feedback, and also the card deck kept being revised and stuff. All of this should come out at the same time. There isn't really a release something when it's confirmed and officially ready. There isn't a need to rush this besides tradition. And in my opinion, tradition is the last reason to do anything. Do it when it's ready, not because you're supposed to, right? Slowing down the rate of change, could also allow Sired to maybe take time to work on other games as well, which is something I'd love to see. I'd love to see what other kind of game, what other conflict game he could come up with. I would love to see him do something else, as well, and then he could work on that, bounce back to BBR, and back and forth, get fresh ideas incorporated that way or something. I'm throwing out again. I'm not saying Sired has to do any of this. I'm just throwing this stuff out here. Doesn't have to listen to me. It's his game. It doesn't have to listen to me. I just want to throw it out there. This version, though, BBR is just going through such an obvious transitional period with this version, more so than normal, that I am going to take a break from competitive play and let the dust settle a bit if it ever does settle. If it ever settles, but I'm at least stepping back from the competitive play aspect of it for the moment. The tournaments are really what drive the constant changes, and it really feels like this game will change immediately after St. Louis. So if you like win a medal at St. Louis, well, now it you know, if you win a medal at not just at St. Louis, but at any tournament, if it changes immediately after that, then your medal means nothing in that sense. You know, I don't know. The old versions of BBR have all kind of been lost to the sands of time. Sire has said a few times that, like, you know, you can always play an older version of the game, but like, you know, in the Google Drive documents and stuff that, or not Google Drive, Dropbox files and stuff like that, he only has like this version up, the files for this version up. Maybe he has the files for 6 up still, but like all the older versions, you can't really obtain those anymore. You can't really obtain those map files or the map files, the card deck files for them, as far as I'm aware. Maybe I'm wrong, but there isn't, like, as far as I know, there isn't a BBR archive, so you can't really go back and play those old versions, or you can't get newer people to play those old versions unless somebody just happens to have those files and stuff. So just throwing it out there, you know. I feel like BB6 should have had a longer shelf life for people to play with it, because 6 is a really good version. It is a really good version. This has potential. This version has potential, but it's got to be ironed out more, I think. Where was I? But yeah, the tournaments are really what drive the constant changes, and it really feels like this game will change immediately after St. Louis. To me, it does. There's a difference between just playing a game and playing a game at a tournament, where you have to think so far in advance and on the clock that, for me personally, it just gives me a headache. You know, it's always awesome to be at a tournament and hang with people who have the same passion, but having to constantly play or practice just to stay in the loop for a tournament gradually kind of sucks the fun out of it for me. Just in a way, it makes it feel more like a job than fun. And I'd like to play BBR and have fun with it again, you know. So right now, I'm not saying I'm not gonna play this version. Far from it. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. Right now, I just wanna play for fun and be able to dedicate my table to other games as well. I mean, obviously, I'm still working on Kings and Kaisers and doing stuff like, you know, I'm developing new ideas. You know, writing those out in my time and whatnot. But but I also want to play other games and stuff and do other things as well. You know, right now I just want to play for fun and be able to dedicate my table to other games in addition to BBR, in addition to Kings and Kaisers, and do other stuff as well. So that said, because this has been such a clear transitional period to me, I will. Where was I? I lost my train of thought. Sorry. So yeah, oh, here you go. Sorry, lost where I was in my notes. So that said, all that said, I will probably. I'm going to take a break from competitive play. I'm not going to St. Louis this year. I will probably return to St. Louis next year, but I'm going to take the rest of this year off for tournament play and see what happens with this version or the next. There are some good ideas here. I know I keep just tapping my hand. I don't know what else to really do other than this, and that makes it harder for me to read my notes. But anyway, there are some good ideas here with this version. I just think this could be refined a little further. Maybe the solution for me personally is just not going to a tournament every other year. Is just, let me back that up. Let me start over with that. Maybe the solution for me is to just go to a tournament every other year and not every year, but we'll see. I'm not going away, but for BBR, I'm not going away, but for BBR, I'll still be active in the community, but I'll be more like lurking in the shadows a little more in that regard in comparison. I'm still down for the casual YouTube war. Don't count me out completely from BBR. I'm just stepping back a little bit. Anyway, those are my thoughts. So, thanks to anyone who took the time to watch these videos and listen to me ramble about this. I have a problem with being a little too thorough sometimes. But anyway, thanks for everyone who took the time to listen to this. Best of luck to everyone who's going to St. Louis. I will probably see you next year. Probably see you next time. But for this year, I am not going to St. Louis. It just is how it is. I'm going to take a year off. It's just a personal decision combined with other things going on in my life and whatnot. I'm going to take a year off and let whatever happens with this keep going, I guess. Again, I feel like it needs to be refined. There's some good ideas here. I just think it needs to be refined a little further. And again, I feel I've had to beat a dead horse on this, but I feel like every year, the change every year it just feels counterproductive at this point. I feel like BBR should really slow down a little bit, and the community can actually grow. Because right now, like it really feels like we're losing players. The rate of change really feels like BBR is losing players. And that is a little concerning to me because I do love this game. I've spent a lot of time with this game. Got into it during the pandemic. I've gone to every St. Louis tournament. This is the first year I'm not going. I would just like to see the unveiling of BBR get a little more refined. That's all. That said, I still love it. I still love this game. This is a good game overall. And I say that referring to all the versions of BBR, not just this version. BBR in general is a good game. I feel like this version has a few issues. The map of this version, I think, has a few issues. Like I said, there's things I like, there's things I don't like. I would say there's more things I would say there's more things I don't like with this version. But a lot of it is also aesthetic stuff. So I don't know. And things could be tweaked too. So yeah, I'm excited to see what happens with BBR. But like I said, don't count me out of BBR completely. I will still do a YouTube war. I'm going in circles at this point right now, but I'm still be down for a YouTube war or a casual game. But I'm gonna take a step back from tournament play, for a bit at least. Okay. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, and I will. Like I said, best of luck to anybody who's going to St. Louis and who goes to the next Atlanta as well. I'll see you next time and shoot the dice with you then.